Welcome to Garden-Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today we get to do the second year spring pruning for my trees that I've planted in the Grow a Little Fruit Tree method. Now I have a couple of pluots here that I planted in the same hole, and if you're wondering what the Grow a Little Fruit Tree method is and what year one's pruning looks like, I will link a playlist up at the top here and down at the bottom. So I do have a pruning playlist that does cover pruning on Grow a Little Fruit Tree. So these are my second year pluots, and I started pruning one of them for a class that we had, but I left another one for this video. So we're going to show you what we need to do to prune these trees so that we can keep them smaller and more protective. Now the lighting isn't exactly where I want it, but hopefully you can see these two different trees. They are two trees planted in the same hole, and if you go online and look up the Dave Wilson Backyard Orchard Culture, or look up a book called Grow a Little Fruit Tree by Anne Ralph, you'll kind of see where I'm coming from. I've used this method for many, many years, decades actually. I learned it in the early 90s in California. Now the purpose of using this method is so that you can have more fruit trees in a smaller space. Now these are two different trees. The one on the right, on your right, is a Flavor King Pluot, and then on the left we have its pollinator, which is a Flavor Supreme. Now the Flavor King is pruned, and it had just as many branches and was just as tall as the Flavor Supreme. Now all of this growth occurred last year after the August pruning. Now, let me get you in closer. Let me show you where I pruned. So the first year, the pruning cut was there, and there were no branches below it. All the branches that are below it grew after I made that cut. So there's that initial cut. Then in June, I went and cut everything back, all the new growth back by half. That is the June cut of last year. And then if you come up here, this is where I made the cut in August. It's kind of hard to see there. Maybe you can see it a little more over here. So maybe you could see it a little more over here. This was the August cut, down to the June cut. And then everything above grew after August. So there's a lot of growth. These are really healthy, robust saplings. Now if you look over here, it's a lot shorter. So I cut more than half the growth. And this really actually breaks a lot of the pruning rules. A lot of the pruning rules say not to take more than 20% to 25% off plums. So maybe you can go up to 30% on plums. And a pluot is a plum hybrid. But what we want to do here is we want to actually spark as much new growth as possible, because what we're trying to do is choose 3 scaffolding branches. Now on this one I have 4. As you can see right down there at the base, 2 of them are really close together. So I think what I need to do is come in and also prune this one out a little bit more, so we only have 3 branches. We also want to clear out the center. What we hope the end result will be these 2 trees will grow together in the canopy and just look like a multi-trunk tree. So let's finish this side. I'll show you exactly how I'm going to prune this side, and then we'll start on this side. Now right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 branches. Now the reason we want 3 is we want these branches to be able to be spread apart and form a strong base for the tree. Actually, before we make this cut, let me take you up to my plum tree and show you what I mean. So this is my plum tree. This is the base of the tree. I'll give you a little further away shot in just a second. Now we have several scaffolding branches here. We have more than 3, but this is a tree that's planted on its own. And I meant to plant it on its own, and I try and keep it around 10 feet tall. But each of these branches are the scaffolding branches. You can see where I made the first year cut. That's about knee-high to me. And then each year I went through and chose different branches so that we could get a nice open shape. So here's a distance view of that plum tree. You can kind of see how it's got an open bowl shape to it. So one of these days I'm going to get better at filming, but I ended up pruning this thinking that the video was on, and we ended up choosing to prune this branch because this branch had a better spacing between all of the other branches. And what we want to do is just have a nice open look to it. So this side is done. Show you what that looks like. And now let's look at the other side. It's probably best to look at it from this angle. So on this branch, we have 3 scaffolding branches. We have 1, 2, and that one there that has several branches coming off of it. So what I'm going to need to do is prune this branch off and this branch off so that we can have better spacing. Let's show you how that looks. Now hopefully you can see me and see what I'm doing. So this is a scaffolding branch right here that I want to keep, as is this one. And then all of this is attached down near the base. So we're going to remove the center ones that are crowding. So we're going to take out, let's flip this around here. That one. And this one. Left too much of a stub on this. You don't want to leave stubs because they will grow a lot of water sprouts. So now you can see where we cut. So we've got a lot of open space in between the branches there. So now let's look at it and see where else we need to cut. And what we want to do is we want it to match this side in size and in bulk. We don't want one tree outperforming another one because it will end up shading it out and out competing it, and then you're just going to have a weaker tree. So we need to make this side as small as this side. So now I'm going to go through and choose the branches that I think are going to make this the strongest tree, and also match the other side as much as possible. Now the first thing that I'm going to do, let me get you in closer again, just so you can see how I look at it. So as I'm looking at the tree this way, I kind of walk around it and look at the other tree, which is in between here, and I say which branches are coming up in the center, which branches are going to point the direction that I want, and which branches are taking up room that don't need to take up room. And the second year, it doesn't, especially in the spring, it doesn't matter how many branches I take out. We just have to start shaping it the way we want it to be shaped. When I look at this, I see these 2 branches coming up, this one coming up, and this one coming up, and this one going out. And these 2 are attached pretty much together right at the base here. Let me see if I can get low enough to show you that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right there. So I'm going to take this branch. We're not going to get it, we're going to really try not to cut too far down, if that makes any sense. We don't want too steep of an angle. We don't want too steep of an angle because it'll make this branch a weaker branch. So we're going to try to do the best angle possible. Hopefully I can do this holding the camera. I need 2 hands, but there we go. I will go through and clean up the cuts a little bit later. It's getting late and I really want to get through this. But there we have that branch. Let's go in the front and look at it. So you can kind of see how that branch fills out now. So let's look at this side. Now when we look at this little tree right here, it's a lot more narrow than this tree. So we have 2 options. And seriously, either one would be fine. We could leave this branch right here as the outward facing branch, or we could cut it to this one and have this one be the outward facing branch. And maybe just leave this one. If we cut this branch right here, it would shoot out up here, which would be more of a match to this one. But we are going to get a lot of growth this summer off this side, off this tree, and we might be able to get it to match this one if we cut it to this branch. Other thing to think about is we have a path over here, and if we start making this tree really wide, how soon will it start impeding access to the path? So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove this lower branch and keep this upper one. So let's get that done. So we're going to go in here, remove this branch as close as possible without leaving a stub. And there we have it. Now I'm also, let's see, yes, I want it the same height as the other one, so I'm going to take the top off of that. And now we have these two branches to contend with. I don't mind this branch coming over this way, but we are going to head it to an outward facing branch, and I'll show you where we pruned a little bit closer there. And then this one, I think we're just going to remove this branch right here. So and then we're going to tip each branch, which means cutting off the tip to help force growth down along the stem. So let's show you a little closer. These two branches are about the same height and about the same bulk. Now we need to work on this branch and the back one. So what we want to do is match that height and bulk. Let me show you the cut down here. We're trying to cut them so we don't leave stubs. And then if you look right here, hopefully we can get it to focus. I don't know if we can get it to focus, but you can see right here is an outward facing bud, and we just cut the tip off of it. So now let's work on this other side. The other side we want facing more out than up, so this is going up. We're going to remove this one. We're going to remove this one because we want it to match the angle of the one over there. And then we're going to tip this one to an outward facing bud at the same height. Here, let's see. Sometimes there's not good buds. There's one right there. So now we have this one about the same height as the other one. And let's look at this side over here. I think we want to actually, let's take it off to here. And we'll bring you in closer and show you what it looks like in just a minute. Now I'm actually going to leave just a tiny bit more bulk on this one. This is a branch that is spaced really nicely. So you can see that the angle's not too sharp, and this one's filling in a space. We don't want that right here. Let's turn this around, get a closer cut. We don't want this pointing up here. We're going to prune it to an outward facing bud. This one back here, I think we're just going to take it, we're going to take it to this branch right here, and then tip this one. I'm going to show you this right here really quick, because I'm going to, instead of choosing an outward facing bud, I'm going to choose an upward facing bud. So here we are. Let me get my shadow out of here so I'm not distracting. So here's the original one that we were trying to match. So we're trying to match this one right here. And this one is a little bit more bulky, but not too much more bulky than this one. So they should be fine. They're both the same height. And I think it's going to be good. So we're going to go over here and look at this for, maybe not exactly our last cut. But right here we have a branch pointing out. Now I don't want this branch to go out further this way because it's going to impede on a walking path. But I do want this to start framing the bulk of the tree. So when you look at the buds, we've got upward facing bud right here, side facing bud here. We've got some lower downward facing buds. But what I want to do is prune it to an upward facing bud. This right here is an upward facing bud. I'm going to prune it right there, and that's going to force growth going up this way. And that will keep it out of the path. If I pruned it to a downward facing bud, it would go more this way. So upward is going to go that way, downward is going to go that way. Hopefully that makes sense. So now we're going to go through, we're going to find all the little tips. There's a little tip right here. We're just going to cut that off. And we're cutting off the tips of the branches just so that we can force more growth. Okay, I think we did it. So let's kind of walk around. There's what it looks like facing this way. Facing this way, you can kind of see the structure that I made them. It's getting a little harder to see because of the shadows. There they are from this way. And there they are from this way. So that basically is all that is involved with the second year spring pruning on your Grow a Little Fruit Tree clumps. Now in the summer, we're going to prune them exactly the same way as we did last year, and I'll bring you along for that. We're just going to remove half of the new growth. And then in the fall, we're going to do the same thing. Well, fall meaning August. August isn't actually fall. In August, we're going to do the same thing and cut out half the growth. And what we're doing when we remove half the growth is, number one, we're controlling the height. And then number two, we're trying to dwarf the tree. We're taking the energy that the leaves are creating down. So when it brings all that energy into the roots for next year, it's going to have a little less energy to push growth the following spring. So next spring. And that's how you actually keep your fruit tree small. Now, I've had a lot of people ask if this reduces the life of the fruit tree, and yes, it does. It reduces it by about 5 years. But I think the trade-off is worth it. If you're going to have 5 less years to have a fruit tree that is easier to work with and where it's more productive for you, I think it's definitely worth it. Now, on my peach trees that I keep 8 feet tall, I get more peaches than my family can use. We actually end up sharing them with a lot of other people. So you still get excellent production with a more manageable tree. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you, and if you have any questions or if you have any more suggestions on pruning fruit trees and keeping them small, I'd love to hear them. And I hope you go have a wonderful garden adventure.